What up, Facebook Live family and friends? The head therapist is back, Elliot Andre, in his cosplay gear for Comic-Con this Saturday. Join me in my geekiness in Fort Collins. Today, I got a super sick interview. I'm going to take these off now so people can see my face. Got a super sick interview planned with two people I'm actually going to be speaking on a panel with at Fort Collins Comic-Con. Ladies, if you would please go ahead and introduce yourselves to our viewers out there. I think they'd really appreciate that.
All right. I guess I'm going first. I'm Stepheny. I am a therapist in Fort Collins, private practice at Hygeia Wellness. We do sliding scale and Medicaid acceptance here. Kind of my background, I started out in victim services with two local nonprofits, Sava Center and Crossroads Safe House. Saw a lot of substance abuse and trauma recovery stuff in that, and decided to move into the counseling realm rather than just the victims advocacy. And that kind of led me down the path of where I'm at now. Most of my practice focuses on the trauma recovery and substance abuse recovery. I like to make sure that my practice is super LGBTQ, geek, pagan, non-traditional faith, minority, even people within the correctional systems that may be mandated or not, just because, I mean, there's so many tiny flips of the coin that could get any of us in those situations, and I always want to make sure everyone that I see feels that they are accepted and not stigmatized in being able to come and work on their mental health.
That's awesome. And a big part about me doing these interviews and talking to other therapists in the field is destigmatizing mental health, whatever that may be and look like. So thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. I'm Voniè Stillson. I'm in private practice with Equilibrium Counseling Services in Loveland. I wear a lot of hats.
I like that.
I am a board certified dance movement therapist. I am the current chapter president for the Rocky Mountain chapter of the American Dance Therapy Association. I am a geek therapist. Probably 95% of my caseload are individuals who are on Medicaid that I work with. And I am also the captain of Airship Iron Opal, which is a Northern Colorado-based social steampunk group. And we talk about without science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, there is no steampunk. And so we bring all of that stuff in together. And from a therapy perspective, I bring a lot of fandoms in. I'm a big believer in, my experience as a geek, because, this is who I am, a part of my whole person, is if you're passionate about something, why would we not use that to help an individual move forward from whatever has them stuck? Part of why my practice is named Equilibrium is my experience is people are always looking to find balance in their lives. Whether it's physical balance, emotional balance, something has knocked them off balance and they're trying to get their feet back underneath them. And so kind of bringing all of those pieces and parts together to work with somebody, and as part of being, an active cosplayer and in the geek community, as well as I talk about, I think it's really important to be able to show up as the whole person. Mm-hmm. And part of why I do what I do the way I do it is I let people know, yes, I present about cosplay. I talk about why I think it's good for mental health. And yes, if you go to Comic-Con, you're going to see me in full costuming, and this is what it is. And I follow all the traditional therapy, rules of I don't acknowledge unless I'm acknowledged first, and that kind of thing. Let people know, just so you know, I look a little different at Comic-Con than I do.
I think we all do, and that's the best part about it. Yes. We're living our authentic selves in costume, which is the most exciting part about going to Comic-Con. I mean, I try not to miss them ever. So, this is just a really cool, different experience for, I think, all of us. I've never spoken at a Comic-Con before, but I think a lot of the people out there and viewers especially would enjoy to see what we have to say. So I appreciate that.
I'm really excited. So I've been in Colorado for about 4 years now. Mm-hmm. We moved up here shortly before the first Fort Collins Comic-Con. Yeah. It was in August, and we moved up here in March. Mm-hmm. And that was the first event that my steampunk group did as a ship. was Fort Collins ComicCon, and they have always been very supportive of mental health and what I have to say, you know, as a dance therapist, as a licensed professional counselor, and just giving a voice to take away that stigma and let people know, hey, this is a safe space, and there are people who are still going to work with you and still take you seriously when you have this passion that you carry with yourself about these things.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited this year because this is the first year I'm going to be speaking, and there's other therapists with me. I'm really happy that it's not just my voice this year.
Totally. It's just so cool that we can all, it seems like, integrate that into our practices in any way that we can, and really provide that space for so many people out there who might not really seek mental health support. I've noticed that in myself, you know, as being a certified geek, you know, me going into mental health even and talking to somebody was so hard. You know, not feeling isolated and in a space where, you know, there was support. So I appreciate what you both are doing. I think that's incredible. And I'm glad that I've been able to incorporate that into my practice too now going forward. Let's let our viewers know out there, like, what do we consider geeks? Like, who's a geek? Because I think a lot of people out there, like, one, give a geek a bad connotation, and two, really don't understand what a geek is. So if both of you could please talk to that, I think that'd really be helpful. You know, it's just like a psycho ed piece of like who we are.
I did an entire 4-hour presentation 2 years ago to the American Dance Therapy Association explaining what geek culture was and fandom, and it was still hard to give an answer in 4 hours.
Yeah, of course.
I actually,
well, in a nutshell, let's say, you know, for people out there watching, thumbs up, viewers out there, if you know what a geek is. Comment, please, because I feel like a lot of you don't.
So I had attended, oh gosh, probably like 4 or 5 years ago, Denver Comic-Con, and Will Wheaton actually answered this very eloquently. He said that everyone's a geek about something, whether it's that you geek out about Marvel or football or music or dance or what have you, that somebody in your life has some kind of passion about something. And that's what they geek out about. And breaking that stigma of like, well, jocks versus geeks kind of thing. Like, they're geeks too. They just geek out about different stuff than we do. So it's just a matter of being able to put that in perspective, is that we just have a passion for something that we really love on an extreme level, and being able to kind of relate to people in that kind of way, whether or not like you're DC or Marvel, like we can all agree that superheroes rock. So it's finding that commonality and not treating it as a stigmatized word, and being able to kind of take back the power of it and say like, hey, it's not that there's something wrong or weird about me. I just like this thing and think it's really cool.
Yeah, and take it to an extreme. And I think that's what people get scared about sometimes, or like uncomfortable with, that, you know, you're out and you're proud about what you do. And I feel like sometimes a lot of people are very kind of in the shadows of like what that looks like for them. And it's, and you know, a lot of this stuff, comics, cause, you know, anime, whatever, it's not super mainstream in America, in my eyes. I mean, I feel like it is, but a lot of people still don't feel like, you know, it's as acceptable as it is to be like, oh, I'm so geeked out on this baseball team, for instance, which I give a shit about, you know. I respect, but don't really care. So yeah, it's kind of a funny dynamic in that space of what that looks like. What's it been like for you, Voniè, in that space, in terms of how you would define geek?
Well, and I define it as, it's a deep love for something. It's, you know, my experience, whatever it is you geek out about, the reason you're geeking out about it is it struck a chord deep within you that's like, yes, that's what I'm trying to say, that I'm failing miserably at communicating and trying to get it across. But it's when you find that thing that resonates, and then you then also find other people that same thing resonates with, and you're like, oh, you're an X-Men fan too?
You're my people.
Yes.
That's so true.
There's more of us.
There's a club.
And that joy of that connection. And this has actually been, you know, what makes a geek versus cosplayer, and with what is that culture, actually became a huge piece of discussion within the American Dance Therapy Association, because it was looking at geek culture as an area of diversity.
Totally.
and what does it look like as an area of diversity. And it was incredibly interesting seeing what other people's reactions were to the idea of geek culture as diversity. Some people were like, oh yeah, of course, you know, and it's a different piece and facet of what's going on. And there were other people who were very protective of what was included in diversity and felt that geek culture did not belong in that same piece. And it led to a lot of involved conversation and a lot of discussion about the judgment that people has about geek culture. The exterior perception looking in for what people think it is versus what it isn't. And one of the things I've seen come up when people try to talk about what is or what isn't geek culture is, I'm going to be the first one to say there's some craptastic parts of geek culture. You know, there's you get into gatekeeper stuff, you get into isms, there's some craptasticness, and that's just being honest. But there's also so much amazingness that comes out of being able to connect with people and finding people who see the world in a similar way. And I think that was one of my big pieces in trying to explain to other mental health professionals who weren't geeks is geeks see the world differently. We connect to the world differently than people who are not geeks. And trying to articulate that, I found was really hard because I realized it was something I took for granted is, yes, this is what resonates for me. But trying to help someone who has no clue whatsoever what this is, and not that they're trying to be a smart aleck, but they really are trying to understand and they're just not getting it, was a really interesting way to kind of step back and look at it. And I have a colleague who brought up a really interesting point that's been bouncing around in my brain as well to throw out to some other mental health professional geeks, is the idea of individuals who are geeks on the sensitivity spectrum. And because as geeks, we see the world differently through these eyes and we see connections differently than other people do. And we draw connections differently. And I'd never thought about that. And I still haven't decided completely what I think about it. But just as a thought exercise, you know, hey, does this fit and does this make sense? It was one of those moments that made me kind of pause.
Yeah, I connect with that too. It's such a big culture, you know, and so many different types of people have so many different types of opinions about what it looks like and what it feels like. And, you know, individualizing that, I think, is what I've taken from that, of like, my geek is my geek and other people can connect with me in that way. It's just being able to let people know what that looks like and finding the communities that really understand, you know, what you see and what you feel so deeply or differently in that space. So yeah, it's been a journey for me, and I'm sure it has been for you and all our viewers out there who feel and connect with this idea of being a geek. It's funny because, you know, people see me from the outside, and I don't know if you two have experienced this before, but, you know, like, I'm athletic, like I like to hike, you know, and then they come to my house and they see this stuff behind me and they're like, you like comics? And I was like, yeah. Like, you have a collection of over 500 comics? I'm like, yeah, is that a problem? You know, it's just like, people don't, like, they see something from the outside and they don't equate to like what your differences in excitement or passion are in the world, especially in the geekdom world. For me, it's just been a funny transition coming back out to Colorado, kind of refreshing and meeting so many new people. And they're like, you like this stuff? And I'm like, yeah, I love it. Actually, it's what fuels me. It's what rejuvenates me in life. So if you two could share stories if you want, or like, self-disclose if you care, kind of like what your experience has been, how you brought it into your practice as yourself. I think that'd be really cool for our viewers out there to know that we are also geeks and we do live this life.
I don't know how well it shows up here, but there's a little circle right here on my chest.
Sure.
That you can see it's not connected to cleavage. That's an X-Men logo. That does not come off. My geek is stuck good.
It's a part of you.
It is. And it's such a deep piece that resonates. But when we got married, my husband understood these 16 short boxes of X-Men comics were part of the deal and were non-negotiable.
I know the feeling.
Yes. And, you know, and I have a space, we have, you know, have a space where all of the collectibles are out and have action figures on the wall and have my comics and all this. People would come over and they would start trying to talk to my husband about comic books and would try and talk about X-Men with them. And he was like, this stuff isn't mine. You got to go talk to Voniè. This is her stuff. You know, and we joke a lot about we're a house divided because I'm Marvel and he's DC. But that was one of those things that I experience even now, is that piece of people presume that, oh, that's a masculine thing versus it doesn't have to be, and where those connection pieces come in for myself. And just, I love the look on people's faces when they put together that, yes, I do all these other unusual things, and I'm also a mental health professional.
Right.
I think that was a piece that was part of my journey, was there was a point where I came out as a geek.
Right.
Because I felt like that was a part of myself I had to keep hidden away, that I could show up and I could be a good therapist and I could do good work, but I had to hide this part of who I really am away, because if people knew I was a geek, they'd stop taking me seriously.
Totally. Been there, done that. Yeah.
And that was a big piece for me, that was like the last piece for me, really figuring out what private practice was going to look like for me and becoming a business owner and kind of moving forward. And yes, this is part of who I am, and I'm going to show up authentically and fully. And that's okay, because that's an asset.
Totally. 100%. How about you, Stephany?
Oh, so my house is kind of similar to hers, but I have a whole room. The guest room is, the entire closet is my cosplays. Right. I was a theater tech geek as a kid. My original major was technical design and theater. I wanted to be a Broadway costume and makeup designer.
Hell yeah.
So I still get to do that through cosplay, through Renaissance Fair, through like my Halloween stuff. I decorate the entire outside of the house to theme with my costume, and my dog gets a costume that matches me.
That's amazing.
Yes.
So I kind of go big with all of that theatrical stuff with it, and all of my autographs, all of my pop vinyl collection, like all of my things that I've collected from conventions and adventures along the way all live in that little room. It actually has a sign that says the Geek Cave in it. Eventually one day, I hope to make it into like a bat cave type thing.
Sure.
Complete with Murphy door and everything too.
Love it. Love it.
But, goals, you know. But I have been told many times in my adulthood that letting my geek shine, that it's surprising because it's not girly, it's not mature. Am I not too old to have a comic book pull list? Am I too old to be dressing up for Halloween? Mm-hmm. And to me, those things bring me a lot of joy and excitement. Kind of like Voniè has spoken about this before with the cosplay and mental health stuff, that everyone I've chosen to cosplay as is somebody that I found characteristics within them that I hoped to instill in myself at some point.
Yeah. And
I find some kind of strength and well-being in being able to dress up as them and feel empowered to kind of take on that armor of being them for even just a few hours.
Totally.
So to me, bringing that into my practice has just kind of become something that happened over time. I kind of hid it at first, but then I found that with a lot of resistive clients, that sometimes being able to like wear that on my sleeve, which I actually technically have a Patronus on one sleeve and a Mad Hatter quote on the other one.
Oh yeah.
On her sleeve.
Like just letting them know that this is part of who I am. And if there's things that you connect with, whether it's something I relate to or not, if that's going to be something that's going to be a talking point for you to be able to get vulnerable with me and connect with me, I will talk about baseball scores or the book that you're reading or the TV show that you're watching. And sometimes that can be an amazing tool to be able to break down those walls when they're feeling super scared about being in a counseling office for the first time in their life.
Totally. Yeah, it's like an icebreaker to connection and vulnerability with working with clients 100%. I feel that.
They're like, you love Harry Potter too? I'm like, heck yeah.
You're damn straight I do. It's part of me, literally, with the sleeves on your arm. And I just got a tattoo the other day at the convention. Hard to see, but I'm a Studio Ghibli fanatic.
Oh,
and I got Naga the boar on my arm, and my client came up to me. He's like, "You like anime?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, let's talk." It just broke down this barrier of like seeing me as like, this therapist who knows everything, sees everything, and has no interest in anything but making this person better. And we sat for the first 30 minutes of the session. We're like, "Yo, like, let's talk about when we're gonna go see it in the theater when it gets revamped. Like, let's talk about what the boar represents for me, and then tell me if you were maybe to get a tattoo from one of the Ghibli movies, what you would get and what it feels like for you." And it was just such a cool experience for me. I kind of was like inside that kid, like, I feel accepted finally. It just was such a cool conversation and experience. Like, unbelievable.
And you hit something I think is such a big thing that I see come up a lot too, is there's a lot of conversation about power and privilege in the therapeutic relationship. And when you connect with somebody, and I'm sure this probably happens with other things, but my experience has been with it most, with either being a geek or being a Southerner, not living in the South, because we do things different too.
Right.
But when you find that chord that harmonizes,
yeah,
that power differential suddenly isn't so big. It's more about two people connecting in a space, working to move forward.
Totally. 100%.
And it's something about those connections that it's hard to just like make them appear like this. But when you connect through a fandom, it's different than, oh yeah, I've, been to the same restaurant as you have. It's a different piece.
It's like almost built-in validation with just like a hobby and interest. Mm-hmm. For me, it felt like the mask just kind of came off. And like I was able to even be more so my authentic self in session with this person. And I think portraying that to them also helped them kind of do the same. For sure. And it was a really cool experience, and I'm glad that it happened, because I wasn't expecting it to. Usually I'm like the long sleeves, like try to cover stuff up. And that day I came in, I had the short sleeves, the tattoo was popping out, and I was like, yeah, I'm going for this now. Like, I'm done caring. Like, no more. If they get it, I get it. Totally. I want you both to talk about this a little bit more, because it came up and it just sparked in my head. But the idea of how, for different genders or different people, however they identify in kind of geek world, what's that been like? Because as a white male, for me, again, generally, it seems like it's been a little bit easier to navigate. And I think both of you expressed, identifying as female, and said that it was harder for what I'm getting from the conversation. So if you could talk to that, because a lot of viewers out there are definitely watching for sure and want to know.
So for me, as a gamer,
mm-hmm.
It can be a little annoying. Also as a comic book reader too. I am super into horror comics and horror games, horror movies. Like Freddy Krueger is one of my favorite characters ever.
Totally.
So I read Walking Dead and Hellsing and Lock and Key.
Hell yes.
So when I go get my pull list and it's all full of horror comics,
sure.
Sometimes I get some weird looks. The fact that I'm usually online playing Mortal Kombat or Resident Evil. I sometimes
kicking ass, probably, right? I mean,
my gamer tag
names.
My gamer tag, without like telling people what it is very obviously female.
Sure.
So I get a lot of messages either talking crap about like being a girl to get out, sure. Or when they find out that I'm actually good at the games I play, I get a lot of unsolicited sexual advances.
Sure.
And at some point I've had to block people because they get a bit stalkerish.
Sure.
So the boundaries kind of get a little bit blurred just because I am female. So the stigma of like, oh, well, what's wrong with you? I've even actually had somebody question my sexuality based on that. Yeah. And I don't really think it has anything to do with where you fall in the spectrum of any of that. I think that males, females, like anybody can play whatever games they want to. I should not be stuck playing Sims and Candy Crush because I'm a girl.
Right.
And for me, and you know, some of the pieces I've run into for myself is, you know, like people would be like, oh, you don't really know about comics. And especially like, I remember when the X-Men movies were first coming out and everything was happening with it. And everyone's like, oh, you just know what that you saw at the movies and all of this. And I would proceed to give them the backstory and talk to them about how it was different from the movie versus the 90s cartoon versus the original comic books, and talking about these changes. And you know, it's almost like, and I know a lot of, you know, female geeks have run into this, is we have to prove our knowledge above and beyond just to have that validation. Whereas because of it being more of a traditional boys club came in, I had jackwagons I had to deal with that with. But I was also very blessed to have a very supportive, connected group of geeks. And again, I grew up in South Mississippi, and people aren't going to think, oh, you had a bunch of connection as a, you know, and supportive dudes as a girl geek. And yes, I still have my 15th birthday party. Several of my friends went in together and from their decks of cards made me my own Magic the Gathering decks, because I didn't have money to buy cards. So they made me decks for me to keep playing. I still play Magic the Gathering. By the way, that is one of the most effective social skills tools I have ever found, is teaching people to play getting people to play CCGs, and then learning how to play, you know, with family. It started out with my family because I taught my nephew how to play, and he's won tournaments and stuff like that.
Amazing.
And then, but then going from within the safe environment and connecting and building with people outside of that safe environment. You know, people have gone and connected with other people, and it's been such a big world opener for people. I play D&D. And my preferred option in D&D is I'm a dwarven barbarian who's all about hack and slash.
Sounds like my character.
Yeah, you know, I'm not an elf. I'm not a cleric. How quickly can I beat my way through this, and let's move on?
So there we go.
Wizard, just because, I mean, I'm pagan, so I had to be a wizard.
but that's also so that it's like people have in their mind, you know, oh, as a female playing D&D, this is the kind of character you're playing. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm doing.
I'm gonna whoop your ass. Yes, literally. Don't mess with me.
And I was able to do that. You know, I was in high school playing D&D, and I was one of a couple girls that played, and some of the pieces that I would run into is there were the people who would play because they wanted to play, and then there are people who would get into playing because the person they were dating was playing.
Sure, of course.
And that was always a piece.
Yeah,
it was always that piece. Like people were always waiting to see. I feel like people were always waiting to see if I really wanted to play, or if I just wanted to play because the person I was dating was playing.
Totally. That's frustrating in itself.
Yeah, and so that was, and I think that's also like a geek rite of passage. If you do tabletop gaming of any kind, is like if you bring a partner in, is your gaming group has to decide, okay, how crazy is this person, and are they going to match with our crazy?
Of course.
And, you know, because that's like one of my running jokes with our steampunk group is I think everyone has we have our own version of crazy, whatever that is, and it's a matter of finding those whose crazy harmonates with yours.
Of course, 100%. And it connects the community, and you know, feeling as if you are who you are and authentically you, and that's the beauty of it. And I think that's what all these generally, you know, groups bring for people.
And I think one of the things that shows up a lot too is, you know, it's, you know, we're 20 plus years after when I got into the geek community, initially, and there is a lot more options and there's a lot more girls in it. There's a lot more people talking about it openly. Like, you know, people talk about Deadpool in the middle of the grocery store, and that's not something people would do 20 years ago. Right.
My wallet gets so many reactions. I have a Deadpool wallet that has plungers on one side, and then he's on the other side with a plunger gun. And if they just see the plungers, it's like, why does your wallet have plungers? And I flip it over, they're like, oh my God, Deadpool!
Mr. Dead.
Yeah,
that's so awesome.
But I feel like that's something that has shifted so much.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
where it used to be. So like that in and of itself is so interesting to me, the way it's changed. And I think there is still some running into it, but I do feel that what people run into today is different than what we ran into 20 years ago.
For sure. I mean, it's more mainstream now, right? I mean, it's more acceptable in, our society to, understand and represent the whole MC universe. I think basically mostly because of the movies. And it's got a lot of people into that, which I think is so cool. Of course, myself being the person who also likes to read the comics and knows the full stories is a little pessimistic, or, why did this happen, or how could this ever happen? But, they're still entertaining, and I think that's what people like. And it's getting a lot more people to get into the culture, 100%, I think, what I've seen. It's amazing, really.
I talk about so much with the movies, is I have to like pull myself out of the fandom to go watch the movie. And I have to like look at the movie as a movie. Is this a well-told story? Do I enjoy it?
Right.
Because there's been a lot of the movies that it's a good movie and it was well done, but it burns.
Right. All right. Why did this happen? I know this doesn't happen. It's like anything that they make to a movie or TV.
I have to do that with Walking Dead too, because I'm just like,
yeah, I hear you.
No,
yeah, I mean, they're starting to get really good now. There was a moment where there was a lull, and now we're back up to speed. But
now the comics are completely over.
Yeah,
which was kind of a surprise and sad. But I mean, I've had random conversations with people at Griffin's Comics about like their thoughts of the show versus the comic too. I mean, I traveled to Genoa, Georgia to watch them film the battle at Alexandria with the Saviors. So, I mean, I am like major Walking Dead fan, but I mean, it kind of goes back to what she was saying, like that feeling of like that you have to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Against like, oh yeah, you don't know what you're talking about stuff. And we're like, actually, all that stuff that you're talking about doesn't even happen in the comics.
I know more than you do.
Yeah.
100% of the time.
I've actually been to
literally
the comics.
I've lived it.
Yes.
I've been a part of it. I love that. Awesome. Before we wrap up today, I want one to know what you're reading right now, both of you, and what you like about it real quick, and I'll do the same. And then let's talk about pitching and plugging our panel on Saturday, and then we'll get the hell out of here.
So what am I reading? I am reading I like a lot of true crime and haunting type stuff. So I am going to New Orleans for Halloween this year, and I am reading a book that's about the Axeman that was in New Orleans. He was a real person, and we're staying at the hotel that he apparently lived in while he was murdering people. So I am reading that right now.
Love it. How are you, Voniè?
So I am reading Tales, The Atlantic Fin and Other Bizarre Tales.
Bring it a little closer so the viewers can see.
So I have friends who are amazing creators who say, Voniè, you're going to do this. And I say, I am. And they say, yes, you are. One of the authors is me.
What? That is so cool.
So this is Brian Oliver is a dear friend of mine. He's part of my steampunk group. He is the person who gathered all of these authors together. And it's just a collection of bizarre tales. So I'm working my way through reading some of the other amazing authors who contributed to this book.
That is so cool.
I'm going to plug Brian again for another piece. He also did a web series and movie called Tales of a Broken Reality.
Cool.
And that was a big steampunk thing. That's one of the things, too, I wanted to touch on real quick with geek culture is there's so many amazing creative people who get to create and make other things. And we've got another anthology will be coming out in October. And I've been voluntold I'm writing another story.
She's voluntold me to do it too.
Nice.
We share.
Are you going to bring it to ComicCon on Saturday? The book?
Yeah, I'll bring it with me.
Cool. I want to see it.
Yeah.
Definitely. Would like to be into that
And
for sure.
actually, and Brian will be there Saturday as well.
Cool.
Brian and 3 of the other authors who are in that book.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Love that. I look forward to meeting them all.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And so what
Awesome.
are you reading?
Oh, what am I reading? I'm reading Uncanny X-Men. I just can't. I can't put it down. It's just too damn good because I connect with Cyclops so much. He's my spirit animal, human character. So anything that he, like, the front cover of that book is so good and it's so powerful, and I saw it and I couldn't not get it. And I got the trades. I don't mess with single issues. Yeah. So I got 2 trades I'm working on right now. And just killing it right now. It's so good. It is so good, and it is so well written, and the art is incredible.
Can I share a fangirl moment?
Yeah, of course.
Does the name Chris Claremont mean anything to you?
Chris Claremont. I mean, I'm sure in the back of my brain somewhere, yes. But who's Chris Claremont?
He's the guy who wrote the Phoenix Saga. And the Dark Phoenix Saga.
Got it. Okay.
And I got to meet Chris Claremont at a ComicCon in New Orleans and was like losing my stuff.
I love the lose the shit moment.
Yeah.
That a couple years ago when I got Rick Remender to sign my Tokyo Ghost
wow.
comic book, and then a couple more. I'll share it with you when I see you on Saturday. Yeah. We don't want to take any more people's time in this regard.
I wanted to share that briefly. I actually talked to Chris Claremont about how I used his work in therapy, and his whole face just lit up.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So, it was awesome.
That makes me so happy. I love that. But anyhow, thank you all for viewing. Real quick, join me, Voniè, and Stepheny at the Fort Collins Comic-Con from 10 to 10:50 to hear about geeks and mental health. If you have any questions or need any resources about being at Comic-Con or just want to reach out to us, feel free to. We'll be there. Also put websites down at the bottom as well.
Tickets are still available. Also, Fort Collins Comic-Con is a fundraiser for the Poudre Valley Library System. And as of the end of last year, so nothing counted from this year, they have raised over $95,000.
Wow. Did you hear that, people? 95,000. Let's keep on adding to that. Let's keep it going.
We're going to hit 100,000 this year.
Amazing. That's so cool. Voniè, Stepheny, I appreciate you both so much. Hugs through the computer. I'm so stoked to actually meet you both in person and geek the hell out together at Con. Thanks again, everyone. We will see you soon. Headed Therapist out. Thanks, you ladies. Have a great rest of the day. We'll catch you later. Bye.
Bye.